It is Tuesday. RawMikeRichards.com, broadcasting live from the DKI studios in downtown Toronto, 234 King Street East, out of the Pacific Junction Hotel. Coming up this morning, the commissioner of the brand new Canadian Premier League, that is professional soccer, right here in Canada, coast to coast. David Clanahan, that's how I'm saying the name. It might be different, but trust me. He's actually from Glasgow. So we'll ask the Celtic or Ranger question. Start off with a bang. Dave, I love you. Always have.
Thanks, Mike.
I was talking about David Clanahan.
Oh, okay.
Thus, those who would know, and I know we've got some viewers over in Ireland, God's people. I got the County Cavan colors and garb on today. Just so you know, you want to talk about futility in sports.
That's them?
Yeah.
Were they the Ottawa Senators of Irish? Okay.
If the Washington Generals went over and played them in either the Gaelic sports, they would still lose. I can't believe we fucking lost. Yeah, well, yeah, it's we're a bunch of culchies. That's the Gaelic word slang for hicks.
Ah.
Yeah, we're backwoods people.
Fair enough.
Yeah, mean people. That's what they're mean people. Mean over in Ireland, meaning cheap.
Cheap.
Oh yeah.
Sound okay to me?
Okay, so here's the Irish joke. What do you call a culchie in a limousine?
I don't know. What do you call?
The deceased.
The deceased.
Yeah. So we'll talk about what that influence and what it is going to mean for soccer in general, to the culture in Canada, where at first people might think, well, what's the deal? Soccer. Well, if I'm talking to a young parent, so parents of those that have kids under 10,
okay,
how many of those kids are probably going to see their first sport is going to be soccer? I'm not saying that they're not playing hockey. I'm not saying that. But of that percentage where you don't have to pay for the ice time and the equipment, and
it's massive. That's why I always wonder why, when I was a kid, it was still a sport. It was still a great sport, but I always wondered why, because of the cost of everything, why more people weren't involved with it. Do you know what I mean?
Because I, being 54, I did not grow up with soccer being something that I overly wanted to play. Mm-hmm. Saw a lot of shorts. Did not like the shorts. Didn't like the rolling around, the knee socks up high. Made me feel uncomfortable.
Right.
I just think that we saw, as North Americans, that it just wasn't a sport that, quite frankly, I mean, the better, and this is still the fight. As you get a little bit older, and this is going to be my point when I talk to David Clanahan today, that we have grown up with. So let's say you go and you play a lot of high school sports, which you and I both did. We played literally every sport in which the seasons made sense. Mm-hmm. And by that I mean, once you got a little more sophisticated in a given sport. So for Dave and myself, it's going to be hockey. The first coach that loses out is the football coach. Because if hockey comes in, then you're not playing football. That hockey coach does not want their star defenseman or center or winger. He's not playing on the high school football team. That also, and then they all lose out. So volleyball probably out. Like there are certain sports that cross where you start to lose athletes. And in this country, you lose out to hockey. Understandably, it is something with the advent of not the culturally what the importance of hockey, but also corporately, you have companies like Tim Hortons. You have Timbits, the gentleman coming in today, who is the commissioner of the new CPL. That was under his watch. The 35 years he spent as the man,
right,
in Tim Hortons. And you think, Dave, the significance of Timmy's hockey and Timbits and all that kind of
hockey?
It's huge.
Oh, yeah,
and
massive.
So what if, in his thinking, and this is what I want to get to, does he see that transference from those who would just run around, play soccer, it's kind of fun, you do it to a certain age, and then you start going off into the sports that are more culturally attainable, if I want to put it that way, to this country? Because I've always said, and we'll get to it, but it's about your professional sport in your own country, whether that's viable or not. Well, why would I pay, even if I'm the greatest of soccer players in high school? What's I'm going to play for Liverpool now? No, you're not. We now have Major League Soccer, which of course has changed things. You see with the success of TFC. So I think it will be a trickle-down effect. So what happens if you're playing at, I don't know, U of S? You're playing for, University of Calgary, whether it's, Alberta. You're playing for U of T, York. You're at CEGEP in Montreal. Well, what if you could actually parlay that, Dave? You get a scholarship maybe in the States. Let's say you do.
Sure.
So you go to whatever school. You go to Syracuse to play soccer. I'm just throwing this out there. Well, you're probably not good enough to go to certain, but now you can come back and play for the Winnipeg,
right,
whatever they are,
whatever they're called.
And then someone in Major League Soccer goes, that Dave Bastille.
That's probably how they would pronounce it too.
I think he can be a midfielder for TFC. Maybe he's going to be Real Salt Lake. Maybe he goes to Seattle Sounders. Maybe it's a Vancouver Whitecap.
I'd rather
project.
not.
So all of a sudden you're starting to see, and guess what happens? That trickle down effect. What happens with the men's national program? You see guys who actually see a future in playing this.
Should improve.
Exactly. It should improve. So those are some of the issues that I want to talk about when David comes in, which I think are very, very interesting. Last night, and I guess if you want to talk about a trade of significance,
it was. Those are some major pieces.
So we're going to talk Blake Griffin.
Yep.
And you see Blake and that massive salary that is going to be leaving, because in the next year or two, maybe even this year, we're talking about a $30 million hit.
How did this deal come about?
Oh, hold on. Let me get rid of this goofball. Okay, go ahead.
The funniest part about that is he just signed the contract less than 6 months ago with the Clips. And it's like, oh, see ya.
Do you think the accountant's in there going,
well, I was just looking at, we just signed a new player. What's his name? Blake Griffin? And
good Lord!
Trade him.
Seriously. Because the Clippers are building for another time, another season, another year, another 5 years. I mean, they picked up a package of goods. More importantly, those draft picks, the protected first, the second, guys. Players, future players like that, younger players from the Pistons. And it's funny from the Pistons' point of view, because right now, if the playoffs were to start, Pistons aren't in the playoffs. The Pistons are fighting to be a 7-8 in the Eastern Conference. Does that make them in that? Well, you're going to have to beat the 76ers. Good luck with that. You're going to have to beat the Washington Wizards. Yeah, good luck with that. You're going to have to beat the Indiana Pacers. Okay, there's your opportunity. But you made this trade. You gave up so much of your future. It's
a lot of cash on the books.
It is.
And the other thing,
massive. It's massive. I think maybe the Pistons are looking also to sell some tickets, because I think Blake would. I'm not
in
saying,
the new building. I'm
not saying Blake fills seats or fills buildings.
I think it's a fair point, Dave.
I think he helps.
Yes, sure he does. Absolutely. And I think that has a lot to do with it. And quite honestly, his record in terms of his health is maybe just a step above Jose Reyes.
Yeah.
Like, it's close.
That's fair.
It's close.
Yeah.
So how many games is he going to play because of the way he plays, or the way that he break his hand on another guy's head? Wasn't that
something like that?
That's a bad one.
Yeah, that's
a bad one.
No,
I've
never done that before.
Guys, can we please stop breaking our hands on the other players' heads? I mean, is that too much to ask?
Did you just take us inside the team huddle there?
Yeah. I'm sorry, he did trade him. That's my account. Trading. Now, here's something that I like. Some of this stuff, when you look at, we just talk about cultural things that are culturally important. If I take a look at most sports in the United States, it is very difficult to relate to what you see down there to what most of our experience has been playing, whether it's high school sports in Canada or just a minor sport. Here is this Blake Griffin? Okay, so this is Blake Griffin from a website I saw called Oklahoma High School Sports Express.
Ooh, Express.
You got to know that jingle's going to be like, "Hey, Sports Express."
As soon as you put express in a word, it makes it that much better.
This is him in high school. I was dunked on once in the time. Of course, we're talking about a time when there wasn't even a three-point line. There was no three-point line. But I was not used to seeing. There was a guy from Pickering High School, and his family went on to York University basketball. So it was a family that had this trait. They looked like if you remember Kelly Tripucka. They all looked like that. They all had the kind of Cro-Magnon forehead, and they were big people. Dave, I'd never seen anyone, and when you do a 200 dunk like in my, you didn't even see a lot of dunk. This is when the slam dunk contest was like new.
No, you'd never see a dunk.
You mean they're not laying it in? They're putting their hand right in there? Oh, yeah, and they're mad, too. They do it really hard. Imagine seeing this in high school. Once again, Blake Griffin, this is Oklahoma high school basketball. Like, seriously. I don't even know. And look, the highlight reel that he had, between that and playing for the University of Oklahoma is legendary. So if you ask, is that going to sell tickets in the city of Detroit in their brand new building downtown? That answer is yes. So once again, Dave just talked about what's going the other way. At some point, if you're a Clipper fan, how much do you drink? Like, are you just hitting the bong every day? Are you just blowing branch? Are you just crying all the time?
Sounds like a lot of the above.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're onto something.
I think all those.
I don't know too many Clipper fans, though. You know any Clipper fans?
No.
I did it as a joke as in high school. I took down our backboard on the driveway, colored it over white, and put the Clippers logo on it. And I had a lot of people come up to us going, "What is that?" And
why are you doing that?
Yeah. Well, I like the red, white, and blue. I didn't mind the logo, the old Clippers logo, and literally nobody had that logo. So
like no one's going, "Hey, Clipper logo, high five."
No
one did that.
Nothing at all.
Speaking of, and again, this is before we have David come into studio, the new commissioner of the Canadian Premier League, the soccer league, looking at sort of, when you got downtime, hockey's going to come back. There was the layoff. I could talk about, I guess, the Pro Bowl, but I don't want to.
No, we're good.
We didn't do it yesterday. I'm not doing it today. I didn't even like two-handed touch or flag football in high school.
Yeah.
Like my two-handed.
Here we go.
Oh, it goes to little Timmy. Timmy, who's got.
That was your two-handed
tackle.
Touch. Was that Timmy you hit, or was that Russell?
No, I wouldn't do that to Russell.
Good.
By the way, did you see the tweet out there about our I just saw the replay of.
No, I didn't see
boy,
that.
I'll tell you, psychotic.
What's that?
To sign up, we'll talk about Aiden's Drive, the thing that we're going to be doing once again.
Yes.
in Hockley Valley for.
What is that? July the 10th or something?
Yeah. So we're going to do a lot of it because we're going to probably broadcast at least once or twice up there.
Hopefully.
And they have a gorgeous. Hockley Valley. If you saw it last year, it looks like we're broadcasting from like Florida.
Yep.
Like it's crazy. So I said, sign up for the day.
That's right.
Going to be a lot of fun.
I remember that. Swimming.
And watch Russell swim naked in the pool.
Yeah,
because I got to tell you,
Yep.
we have a bunch of the studio audiences here today.
Yep. Massive studio audience. One of our all-time favorites.
The amazing Govin is here. And he said, naked, where do you get tickets for that?
Yeah. I didn't think we'd have a demand on them, but I guess if that's the way it is, Russell's going to have to get in the pool with no bathing suit.
I'm going to show you something. I've always said to coaches that the wins kind of, as much as championships are great, the thing that stays with you forever, and I'm preaching to the choir when I'm done with the amazing Govin, it's the losses.
Mm-hmm.
The losses you never forget. The losses happened yesterday. I don't need to talk about Paul McCallum's.
That was funny.
I
love that.
That was a spiral for Govin that he will never recover from.
The worst kicker ever.
Now think of high school.
And I had Troy Westwood on my team.
And
he's still better than. Oh, sorry.
Think of the worst loss that you had in high school. Or high school age.
I distinctly remember it. Yeah.
Okay.
I can tell you. You want me really quick?
Yeah, I want to hear.
So we're facing off. We're facing against the St. Paul's Crusaders, which is an all-boys high school, one of the superpowers in Winnipeg, and we're up by 6 points. Couple minutes left in the game. They drive the ball down the field, score the touchdown to tie it up at 16. They kick the convert to make it 17, but the guy shanks the convert wide. It doesn't count. It's 16-16. All of a sudden, there's a flag on the field. Offside, River East, re-kick it. We lose it with 35 seconds left on a re-kicked convert to the boys team. that we wanted to kill.
That is just that's a bad one.
You never forget that, right?
Okay, I would suggest this is by the way Chicago High School. So it doesn't matter. It's what Evanston against Maine South, I think it's called. So this is literally the last play of the game. So this team, if he sinks this, they would go up by 3. There's seconds left to go in the game. So if he sinks it, they go up by 3. Here is one of the worst losses I've seen. Happens to be high school basketball.
You take a deep breath, you bend your knees, you let it fly. And rattle in and out. And nearly taken away. That's for the win. It's online. It's good! What a finish!
Oh my! That's my Dick Enberg. Oh my! I've never seen anything like that. That's high school basketball, folks. Look where they played. Look at the atmosphere.
What a shot.
Now, this will be a very good night for little Johnny there.
Yeah.
Whatever is going on in his world, nothing.
Yeah, he's getting extra comic books tonight.
Well, he'll be 45.
Telling everybody about
working
that.
at the lumberyard. Hey, Jimmy, how about unloading the truck? The year was 2018. 2 seconds on the clock. I took the ball. Like, it's just, I mean, it's almost too good, right? It's almost the moment so big it almost
pretty awesome.
It almost crushes you. Okay, so we are just moments away. So David will be coming into the studio, and soccer in Canada has a really interesting history. Depending on the city that you're talking about, here in Toronto, it was about the original was the Toronto Metro Croatia. There's a club team that just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Toronto Metro Croatia, and then it became the Blizzard, and that was sort of the advent of I would say for non-soccer Canadians understanding it. Brian Budd was a big part of that. God bless his soul. My God, I miss him every day. We're going to look at a scene. This is from the Big O in Montreal. This is the Blizzard, and the game is being done actually by Don Chevrier. Is there a clip that we haven't shown from like the 70s that is not Chevy doing it? Here's another guy. God bless him. Miss him too every day. So let's take a look at where soccer was. We know where it currently is, but when David, the commissioner, comes on, we're talking about where soccer in this country is going. David Clanahan after this.
Foul is called against him. You see him. He's got the great speed. Bursting down the wing. You see him try to get around Wilson, and he lost his footing. This AstroTurf is causing some problems. It rained here in Montreal very lightly overnight, but I think the field is still very slippery.
Well, it is a treacherous field to play on at times, especially where there are seams. This stadium is used for baseball, and where there are seams in the carpet, those are the areas where it's treacherous footing.
19 minutes, 13 seconds has elapsed in a scoreless first half. The Blizzard and the Montreal Manic. Hope you're enjoying it here on the Global Television Network. Towers. Martinovich. And Bosmeyer.
And that's always dangerous. In soccer, every man has a responsibility. It's when those central defenders come up and get in on the attack, as we saw Radi Martinovich, those are the players who often go unmarked. Colin Franks wisely picked them up as he came streaking through, and he shaded them off the ball, and Chersky made the play. But it's oftentimes when you can't get something going in the midfield or up front, it's those defenders who come forward who end up having the open shot.
Calvert for Reagan. And Rigby lets it bounce over the line. This is your Molson soccer telecast.
An accident is waiting.
There it is. I guess we no, forget that. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Yeah. Hey, why is Don Chevrier screwing us? Even from the grave, Chevy's still taunting me. I don't like that at all. That, of course, again, memories of the Toronto Blizzard versus the Montreal Je ne sais pas. I have no idea what they were called back then.
Well, they weren't the Impact.
No. They were the chandeliers.
There you go.
They were the officers of the Leo. they were lawyers.
We heard David Clanahan.
No.
Clanahan. Because I said Clanahan because here's an interesting story about this. I did a little research, David, because I looked at it and said, well, that's a Scottish name, but with and here's a conversation. People are like, Richards, just stop it. The Anglo-Norman invasion of me people in Ireland, and then that name came over, and there's a lot of them in an area called Roscommon. So you would probably in the north have some relatives because here I'll move this closer for you, David.
Yep.
You are a Glaswegian?
Glaswegian, yes. Yes. Clydebank, actually.
So do I dare ask a Celtic Ranger? That's a problem.
It's a blue nose.
Okay, well, there we go. It's like I get together with Alan Frew and I just don myself in everything green. He goes, "You're making me sick with that. What are you doing?" So happy to have you here today, and actually the announcement of hearing about the Canadian Premier League. It's the right call, even if you're looking at it from a cultural standpoint of where soccer is in this country. But I also think even from a corporate standpoint on where you'd want to seriously put your money on something that has, significant growth and traction. But I don't think it's even remotely close to where this sport actually can go, considering how many kids are interested in soccer. So how does this come to be, this idea of having a Canadian pro soccer league?
Well, I think the key thing, Mike, is that it's time. When you look at Canada and you look at what's happening in the world, there's a number of different indicators. First and foremost is just look at the demographics in Canada today, and what's happening there. Look at the fact that there's as many young women or women playing the game as there are males. And so that's amazing.
Yep.
When you actually think about, and then you look at what's happened and again, my hat's off to them, the MLS teams and what they've done in the American League, obviously, but they've done a great job. So there's that too. And then finally, and this is the one that really is what does it for me, because I can remember growing up and having to go to a local soccer club to pay $20 or $10 if you were under 15 to go and watch a game, and it was brought in by satellite with one of those giant dishes that was the size of Mount Everest type of thing. Yeah. And you get to see one game. Now it's not, if you look at what's happening just in regular TV, you can watch as many as a dozen games on a weekend.
Well, people back home would say, we're seeing more soccer here now than we ever did back home.
Absolutely. And the thing that it's also happening is young people and the advent of what's going on from a social media and digital perspective. And obviously, not to plug them, but what EA Sports has done with FIFA and every year the releases. My 13-year-old son, Kyle, he knows more about global soccer than I ever did. So it's broadened their knowledge and obviously the interest. And that's you can see it we're at an inflection point with soccer in Canada.
How did you get involved with this? What was the go-between when this league was created and the search was on for the commissioner? How did you get involved with this league? And obviously, it's another chapter of your life.
Sure. Well, I grew up working in the Tim Hortons business, and obviously I was there for 35 years. And
by the way, we're drinking delicious Tim Hortons coffee right now.
Thank you.
Aren't you? Sorry. Go ahead.
So certainly, I had learned a lot through business, and so the business acumen was acquired through that business. But then, but I'd always been very passionate about sports, and luckily, and through good fortune, we at Tim's had always done a lot of work with everything from children's soccer. We have over 300,000 kids playing Timbit soccer, all the way up to the professional teams across Canada and into parts of North America where we operate. So this is kind of an intersection of those two things. And so when because I had been exposed to people like Bob Young and Scott Mitchell and people that are involved in
is Scotty involved in this too?
Scott is involved in
Excellent.
it as well. So yeah, so they approached me and said, "Listen, we know you're very passionate about soccer. You still play. Would you be interested in doing this?" And I thought, this is a great idea. And I learned a word called legacy, because I see a lot of the owners that we're talking to, potential owners for the league, they see this as a legacy thing with lots of patience. They understand that it's going to take time. And so, again, it's all about those stars aligning on doing something that's going to make a difference.
David Clanahan here on rawmikeRichards.com. Did I say it wrong again?
Yeah, he did.
Clanahan.
Yeah.
For a guy that claims he's from overseas, from across the pond.
Because,
my Lord.
Have you ever heard Clanahan?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because that's how I thought it was pronounced.
Yeah, that's the lazy way of saying that.
Well, you don't want to be saying all the consonants. We're not from the Czech Republic. I'll just call you Davy Jones. How about we go with that?
Just call me Charlie.
You also were probably under your watch with when we talk about the grassroots sports with Timbits hockey. So you know of which you speak because that has been. Well, it's again part of that culture, which Tim Hortons, if what is Canadian? If you had to define what is Canadian, if it's not sort of Tim Hortons tragically hip, and then something else, I really think
called hockey.
Yeah, and then if we're talking about that, I think when you start talking about Timbits hockey, that has led itself into just a marvelous program where kids get a chance to play. So if we're looking at sort of that trickle down effect, then how does someone in high school not see that maybe in Winnipeg, in Hamilton, in Toronto, all of a sudden it's maybe you're not competing against Javinko, maybe it's scholarship guys who went down and had a scholarship at Syracuse or University of Texas. There's a place to play. That's a game changer.
That's what starts it, right? And when you think about it, I mean, when I played when I was younger, once you hit the age of 17, you were playing with in the adult men's league, and it was once in a while for a beer and a couple of bucks. That's what you're getting paid for, right? But today, now kids will have something else to do if they go for scholarships or they can play in teams that are coming up. And then who knows what opens. Maybe it opens doors outside of Canada for them as well. Hopefully they decide to stay here. It's a great country to raise a family and play soccer in as well. So we just think that there's a tremendous opportunity. I mean, you think about it. They say published the number is about just over 1 million people playing soccer in Canada today. I think that's understated. I don't believe everyone's registered because, again, as I know, there's 300,000 plus kids at 5 and 6 years old playing Timbits soccer. So if we start from that foundation, we must be wrong on the million. It probably could be 2 or 3 times.
I agree.
That much.
I totally agree.
So logistically speaking, tentatively hoping to start this league when?
We will start April 2019.
To April 2019.
Yeah, that's what we're marching towards.
What's the goal of the amount of teams?
So we're talking right now to, and in when I was doing some press last week, I was talking 12 to 15 communities. It's actually gone up from there now because we've had at least 3 more expressions of interest. So now it's started to snowball a little bit. Now, having said all that, all of those communities / clubs aren't necessarily in the same spot as far as along the path. So we will launch with 8 to 10 teams. And it won't be long before we bring some others on, but we'll be pleased at 8 to 10. When you think about it, most of the Premier Leagues, if you look around Europe, they're in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 teams in their top tier.
In the top tier, correct.
Top tier, yeah.
GTA area, how many teams are you looking at right now? Because there are some rumors about Markham. Maybe you can't get into some of the names, but if you can just give me numbers wise.
Yeah, we'll have so it depends on how you define GTA.
Okay.
So if you
Southern Ontario, how's that?
Yeah, if you're talking Southern Ontario, you're looking
that's big.
You're talking at least 3 to 4 teams.
Okay.
That we're
I would think
there.
London's got to be a attractive location.
There's no doubt. There's the interesting thing about what we're doing, and this is something that's started to bubble up as well, is the club owners and the clubs that we're talking to are being very creative about the stadiums they're looking at, because there are some new stadiums going to be created. I'm not telling tales out of school by talking about Halifax, where we're going to look to play potentially on the Wanderers ground there, and there's about a 7,000 to 8,000 seat stadium that's going to go on those grounds, and it's modular. And so that type of modular system, to what's happening overseas, if that can be kind of imported into Canada, it allows us to be flexible and build up, and so that we can raise the level of attendance with the level of play and quality of product, and as we go further on.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because watching on the weekend, it was FA Cup stuff, and Newport out of it's a town in Wales, so it's a Welsh town, and they were playing like Tottenham. Like this would be the biggest event in that town in maybe ever. I mean, they're not getting Harry Kane every day coming to play ball. And I noticed for the first time, at least to my eyes anyway, because the stadium's so small and they tend to like to build up in the end zones, there was that modular back behind the net that I had not really seen because generally if you're watching the Premiership, you're seeing big buildings. But when you see the FA Cup, they go to smaller towns. And I just thought it was the coolest thing. I thought, that's so smart. And here you are talking literally 48 hours after I saw the game that is sort of the blueprint for maybe where this can go. It's a hell of an idea.
For some stadiums, for sure, and pitches. But it also, if you think about it, it also allows you to go into towns that don't have to have 1 million people in them.
Yes.
And so all of a sudden it starts to make sense, and it allows you to grow with the game. You know, you think about some of the EPL teams like Burnley. I think Burnley only think they have 50,000 people in that town. Now, they're about 100 years ahead of where we are, obviously.
Right.
But think about that. That's amazing, right? Because that means you've got a supporters club that really, supports their club.
CPL, is that going to have a ratio of you have to have so many Canadians on a roster compared to international, I guess you can say?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have had some great discussions with the clubs and the owners that we're talking to. And one of the things I really liked was that we talked about this idea of Canadian content and this idea of, listen, at the end of the day, we want to develop great players for Canada, because this is not just at a community level. It also ladders all the way up to a men's and women's national teams
It has
compete
to,
on the
yes.
big stage. And the women's team already does a fantastic job of that, but we need the men to be able to do that too. So in order to be able to do those types of things, we need to make sure that we have that player content. So we're talking through that. Don't have any details at this point in time, but it's very important. And if you think about it, the last 3 World Cups, you've only had only one country has qualified for a World Cup final that did not have their own Premier League, and that was Iceland, and that was because of the size and because they were allowed to have their players play elsewhere.
Well, and you said it not only is important, I think it's paramount, because when you take a look at some of those results in the country, in the world rather, those countries, when you take a look at their leagues, and we talked about this, I think, just the other day. You know, if I'm looking at the disappointment that people have in the English national program, if I'm taking a look at England, I'm taking a look at Italy, I'm taking a look at all these other countries where their top leagues, which, you know, when you're talking the Premiership, they're all, the stars are all foreign born. They're not the nationals, which has really hurt the program in England. But the ones that continue to show, like the Bundesliga, those stars are all German, so the German team looks great. Spain, the same thing. And the Brazilians are just born as fetuses, I believe, with soccer balls. But this is why, you see, you talk about the size of some of the venues. Look at Scotland's Premiership. If people haven't seen, sometimes when you're looking at Kilmarnock or you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize it looked like that. There might be 8 to 12,000. These are teams that have been around for like 100 years.
Sometimes when you watch a game, you wonder, how much does it cost for a sheep to get into the game?
Yeah, exactly. And so
new promotion.
And so how, aside from Celtic or Ranger,
yeah,
and you look at the stars on those teams, how is Scotland as a country? Because people are saying, when Scotland to get back in the World Cup? Well, it's kind of like Ireland a little bit. Ireland had a shot, but it's not on the same level. And in Canada, when people are pissing around going, wow, they're ranked 76. Yeah, there's a reason for that.
Well, when you think about this, so here's a couple of facts for you. So when you look at European countries, Scotland, Portugal, and Turkey are actually, their average fan base per game is between 10 and 11,000.
Okay. So
that's not quite that. That's not that high. When you think about Scotland and you think about Celtic being about 54,000 per game, and Rangers being somewhere between 45 and 50,000 a game, you can understand how the stats are inflated. So we've got our feet permanent, like really grounded. We're firmly planted on the ground. So we expect that we'll be able to bring good attendance in, put good product and good quality play on the field, and then as long as we do that, then it'll grow, because again, we believe it's a community-based business, and that's the beauty about soccer, is it really does, it thrives at the community level, and that's important to the supporters.
So you're the commissioner of the league. You just announced last week the president of the league. What's the difference between the two titles, president and commissioner?
Well, the commissioner I'm more involved with.
Like a czar?
Not so much czar.
A throne?
Just making sure everybody behaves themselves.
There you go.
The president does all the work. The commissioner gets to go on radio and TV. How's that?
There you go. Yeah, because it's a pretty good signing, considering that Paul spent a lot of years starting up the MLS franchise with TFC.
tremendous. I mean, Paul, if you look at, we are very, very lucky. If you look at the level of experience he has around soccer and other professional sports, he comes with deep knowledge. Great to see. We'll start to talk about some of the rest of the team, but we've put a great team together. In fact, we've had a number of people say, "Geez, how did you ever come up with this kind of team?" And I think good projects attract great people, right? Like they see something in it, and so we've got some really good people. So you're going to hear about these people in the coming months, and a lot of your listeners and your viewers are going to recognize these people too, because they've been around soccer and pro sports in Canada.
Well, you have a lot of things that I think that are important to someone that's getting involved. Number one, an actual love for the game. I mean, as much as we're talking about a business opportunity as well. The fact is, when you play Sunday footy, where guys are not really that careful when it comes to tackling, some are a little tired, some are a little hungover, some guys aren't going to quite run all the way down the pitch. It's a little much to ask, And I think that your relationship with guys like Bob Young and Scott Mitchell, who I think are great people, and being a Ticats hooligan. I've kind of grown up with what happens there, but also, I think that your experience with Tim Hortons just shows you from a business savvy, what it really takes from a franchise perspective on how to grow business. Yeah. I really think this is a tremendous move, and I think for a lot of young guys, the majority of our audience, they're all under the age of 35. If you're sitting there watching, going, so you're saying when I go to high school, I could actually maybe go to McMaster, or I could go somewhere, and there might be a place for me to play. That, to me, is just enormous, not only necessarily from a chance for a young man to maybe make a living, but it just, again, the cultural interaction, it's just good for all, as you say, communities.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And there's some of us that still play when we're in our 50s, and my team, we lost 1-0 in the final last year in Burlington, and it took me 2 months to get over it. So that never goes away.
Yeah. That's unlike all the Scottish people I know. They just let it roll right off their back. Let's talk about the Queen. The Queen is it. You're aggressive defenders. This is what.
No, that's what they say.
That's what I understand. The odd high tackle.
They don't bother having to write my name on their yellow card. The referee's bringing it's already permanently in there.
Yeah, just call him Clanahan. He'll go nuts. He'll go nuts. Well, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you very much.
I think we're all pretty excited about it. We'd like to certainly keep in touch and do what we can to support the guys. And I'm just curious, in terms of, and as you said, it attracts other business people. Partnerships. So would big sports broadcast? Do they have any interest in this? Is it something where the CFL, because they might have venues, you just mentioned, Bob, where there's a sharing of it, and I think that's a big part of it. I mean, if you're playing in Hamilton, you get to play at Tim Hortons Field. That's a pretty cool thing to do. But as you say, not everyone's going to have that. So how does it work with the partnerships?
So very, very interesting when you bring up broadcasting, because that's the other thing that's changed dramatically even in the last 5 years. And so yes, there's traditional broadcasting that's out there, and obviously we're talking to those people. But there's what I will call non-traditional broadcasting that is pursuing us as well. And so that's going to make I think create an opportunity for us to broadcast more games, so that it's more it's available to more Canadians on a regular basis. So we'll see how that works out. We're not saying that we're going to get there, but fingers crossed. That's what I'm looking for, is how do we get the content out as much as possible. But again, that has changed so much in the world. I mean,
of course, well, so this is what we're doing right now.
You couldn't do it. Yes, exactly what you're doing right now is phenomenal, right? Yeah. It couldn't have been done 5 years ago, in my opinion.
I didn't know what a podcast was. Like, I seriously didn't know.
I still had to look it up when I was on my way over here.
Yeah. Well, it's very exciting. I said, now before you go to the names, people are always, that's the big thing when they're. I don't care what the sport is, the ability to name your team. Does that get discussed necessarily? Because it's possible someone just wants to call themselves Winnipeg FC.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking as a league, I'm like, well, can we do better than FC? Or, I think the funniest name in the world is Real Salt Lake. I don't know how they got that Spanish name in a state dominated by Mormons. Yeah. I don't know. It's about the biggest, and yet it becomes part of culture. I like the Sounders. That makes sense. All those kinds of names. Although the Chicago was at the fire, you know, the thing that almost killed the entire city.
Well,
that's a weird name. That's a weird choice.
Some truth.
Are people going to have these kinds of abilities?
Yeah. So we've had the same discussions. We don't want everyone to be called United or FC.
Yes.
Not interested. So we have a team of 4 or 5 individuals, including our marketing director and a videographer, going to the different cities and meeting with club supporters and these supporter clubs that have popped up, which are amazing. 15 or 16 have popped up, and so we're having lots of dialogue there and giving them input. We actually believe that, you know what, at the end of the day, we want the supporters to have input into what's going on in their club, and the owner group that we're dealing with wants that as well, because you get that groundswell happening, and there's an ownership piece that has to happen at the 13-year-old level or the 5-year-old level all the way up through, right? So we're pretty excited about it, and we will be different. We're not necessarily going to be your traditional FC or United. We're gonna give these clubs identities that make sense, and people from the communities I believe will be very, very proud of the teams they have.
Anything different with the rules? You kind of touched on something. I'm just using the example of Vince McMahon launches the XFL and says, we're going to do again, exactly. Good luck to him. Hey, bless him, right? But he says there's going to be different rules than the NFL. Is there anything going to be different about your league compared to what we've seen traditionally in any sort of professional soccer league?
So I think what you're going to find is that no, there won't be. We will follow the FIFA model. So FIFA model is a little bit different than the MLS in the fact that we will have a season that runs from April through October.
Okay.
No playoffs.
Okay.
Whoever wins the league wins the championship, right? And so that's important to us. It also sets us up for the opportunity to do, you know, again, dream a little big, but you have to dream in this life. But
100%, yeah.
Yeah. So it sets us up for a promotion and relegation, and if we get to a second or third division, if you want to call it. So, you know, if you think forward, you know, then that kind of lines you up with what's happening globally. And Mike, you referenced this idea of the FA Cup and, you know, Newport or Peterborough playing against, you know, Premier League teams, and what does that do for those towns? You know, it's all about everyone striving to be that next team that makes the jump up, right? So,
you know, and you can name the star of the league, but, you know, you have some of these world, you know, just enormous names in the world of soccer, and all of a sudden you said in Peterborough or some of those Welsh towns, they're down in Cardiff or whatever. And you're never going to get that close again, ever, because it's not probably it may never happen again, ever.
A couple of years back, you know, people hadn't even heard of Leicester.
True.
And then they end up in the big league, and they
the craziest story of all time.
Unbelievable, fantastic story.
And it's funny, David. You know, when people say, well, "Why is it so great?" I said, "Well, I can't think of an equivalent of being that low, where they came from, the previous season, and just sort of and then beating." Everybody, it's like Grand Rapids. All of a sudden, decides out of the AHL that they're going to come into the NHL, and then they win the Stanley Cup. And people say, well, that could never happen. Well, that's about the closest thing I can think of.
The only thing I could think of that would be anywhere close would be, and it's still not as close, would be the Las Vegas Golden Knights. With a team of, I don't want to say cast-offs, but a draft team, and they win the Stanley Cup in their first year. That would be, you know, that would be close,
very close to it,
but still not even close to what Leicester pulled off that year, which is fantastic. It's almost like they snuck up on people.
Well, yeah. Who was the one that bet on them too? There was
one guy.
Yeah, that made like $100 million. Like it was great. My favorite betting story in Scotland. So Alan Frew goes over, and he's a huge Ranger guy, and he sees one guy, because you go to the punters, you know, and so it's in the day where it's now it's probably all electronic when you go to the bookmakers, but it was the chalk days, right? All the chalk. And so all the odds are up about what they can bet on. And he sees one of the guys on the Rangers, some African guy with about 40 consonants and letters that we can't pronounce in a row. And he's like, oh, it's about, 9 million to 1 or whatever it is. So Alan, I put like a wee wager on that. And so they go to the game, like the 89th minute, and it comes into the game. Scores. So Alan just goes running back to the bookmakers, and of course it's erased. And he just goes, what about Stevie Mokale? He goes, He goes, that was him. He goes, no, it wasn't him. He goes, it was him. He goes, no, that was his brother.
Only in Glasgow.
Yeah, I was going to say, tremendous stuff. David, thanks so much for coming in. We're really thrilled that you took the time for us, and best of luck with it, because I think it is going to be wildly successful. And like any other good business, as you know, it's the growing part of it. It's the infancy and seeing what people can do in the beginning, but not panicking. Though that's the one thing I think sometimes about business in these days, especially on our side with broadcast. They panic so early. People like comfort. And to have comfort, it's got to be ritual. I'm sure, when Timmy's comes out, it wasn't what it is now.
No.
But it took a long time. People just assume it was always there. Well, it wasn't always. A coffee shop didn't even look the same. So now you've integrated yourself into the Canadian culture so much that if you go to buy a cottage, if you click on one of the Remax or whatever it is, the things that show up within the radius, the first thing is distance to Tim Hortons. It's the first thing that shows, not even gasoline or food. It's Tim Hortons. So that's the kind of patience you have to have, and I'm sure you've got that. So, David, thanks so much for coming in. That was just great.
Thanks very much, guys. Okay.
Talking to the Canadian Premier League, that was fantastic. Let's, as David goes out here, let's show what he doesn't want to see necessarily in his brand new football league. This comes from the United States, where sometimes I think from time to time they are maybe unsure of the rules, or maybe just the players are. I'm going to show you a clip from a Sunday, what they call the Sunday League, where it looks like, I don't know, what was it, Christian Okoye is playing. It looks like he's a goalkeeper for this one team. Another footballer decides that he's going to challenge the goalkeeper, and the fans lose their mind, because I got to tell you, are we not having the? Is not coming? This is what happens when what's his name? Songus. This is what you don't do, and people are wanting a penalty on the goalkeeper. I kind of think it was the other way around, but the player didn't do well. This will not be, by the way, featured in the CPL. I can guarantee. David saying that.
Like that, I'm on your side.
Ref, that was a charging foul. He's the one when he pulled his arm. He pulled his arm, Ref. That's bullshit, Ref. Fuck it. He pulled his arm. He elbowed him in the face, Ref.
You gotta stop the game. You let everything else go, and that's what happens. You want me to do it? I'm not a doctor. You have the whistle. He goes an elbow straight to his head, and that's what happens. That's shocking.
You gotta live with that.
Ref, he's not okay.
Ref, you have more authority than that. You can do better. You can do better. Hey, come on! That's a red card! Red card! God, come on, you guys. José! No le des que afecte! José! Calmado, ya, calma, va a terminar el juego, calmado. Me están provocando! Hey, guys! Hey, Kim.
José, cálmate, hijo. Cálmate.
Well, I'm sure we'll probably edit that down. We had to make a little change in the studio, of course, as you know, when guests come in. So you saw more of that soccer game than you'd ever want to see.
Good game.
Good game. But I like the fact that the goaltender just complete. Like if you go rushing a goaltender and he just goes like this, hey, penalty. No, it's not. No penalty. All right, so there's David. Let's. I should. Well, that's not the music I was looking for at all. Let's. Oh, YouTube's going to do what it does. But that was very fascinating, I thought, with the Canadian Premier League. I think it's going to be very successful. I love the idea of where it comes from, the community, and when you're talking about, again, the understanding of how to grow a business, don't you think Tim Hortons, the guy that was behind it for the last 35 years, probably has a pretty good idea? And I think that in certain areas where they know they don't have a huge stadium, but the idea of the modular, you know, how they build it up. If you're a CFL fan, you know exactly what that looks like in the end zones where they build it up for Grey Cups generally. Not doing like what they did when the Rocket played in Winnipeg. Do you remember that?
I was at that game.
That swayed in the wind. It was, and you know what? That one section alone, I think there were 30,000 people.
It was
the biggest end zone I've ever seen.
I was in the end zone, and it was a lot safer than it looked.
It looked like nobody sneeze.
No.
Because then they did the same thing in Saskatchewan, and the guy had a heart attack and he died. They couldn't get him out.
Yeah, I did.
Calm down, you're spilling my pills.
Yeah, Matt Dunnigan against Danny Barrett in the 1991 Grey Cup.
Some guy, actually a cab driver, tried to tell my buddy Doc Logan that that game was in Calgary. They were in Calgary. The cab driver's in Calgary.
Nope.
I'm going, what are you talking about?
Nope.
When did McMahon have like 2 levels? By the way, did you what? What are you doing? The world's coldest game.
Yeah, it was brutal. I actually wore an entire snowmobile suit. Like you get in there and you're insulated from toes to high neck, plus the balaclava, plus the hood, and yeah.
John Candy was frozen.
Fun, yeah. Gretzky was there. Bruce McNall was there.
Alan Thicke was there on the sidelines.
Matt Dunnigan played a phenomenal game, and
they stuck him with needles before the game.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
exactly. It was a very good team. The Argos in that era, if nobody remembers, and you should, were almost like the Rock and Roll Express. It was a rock concert anytime these guys would come to town.
I would go as far as saying, and this is not at this point it's not that I'm certainly a diehard, but of course a diehard for the league. But NFL Films, with the fisheye lens and the music and all that, they did, and it exists somewhere. I don't have a copy of it, but I'm sure
see that.
I am sure that it is on YouTube or the net somewhere. That year that was documented was unlike any other year that I've ever seen in the CFL, because you said it was a traveling roadshow of Hollywood with John Candy, and everywhere they went, the games were crazy. You had the Rocket. It was really, really magical. I remember that one game in BC where Doug Flutie was the quarterback for the BC Lions.
Yep.
Under crazy, remember Murray Pezum?
Yeah,
remember the Pez?
The Pez.
What a nut job. Like, he was nuts.
There's a couple nut job owners throughout our lives of the CFL.
Yeah. Slash.
Hi, Gleavermans.
Slash almost criminals.
Yeah.
Like Harry Arnest. What was going on with that? Where'd all the money go? So Pezum, I think, at one point was taking, because they started to jam BC Place.
Yep.
But he had other business holdings, and he would siphon the money from one business into the other. It's like, the BC Lions lost $2 million. Oh, what are you talking about? The games were all sold out. Oh, no, they lost. The popcorn's expensive. Sure it is, Murray. The Pez. Those were some crazy days.
Good nickname, though. Good nickname.
We also, what's the other clip that I have not had a chance to play yet? Okay, this is so we talked about the Blake Griffin deal. We talked about what it's like watching them play basketball in high school. Get a load of this. This is Kobe Bryant. Now, I think he's playing for Marion High School. Is that who you have up there? This is Marion High School. He looks almost, even in terms of how he plays, he looks similar to the way he was in pro. But what I find interesting is, get a load of the quality of the television broadcast for a high school game in the United States. There's the full play-by-play, Dave. You've got everything going on. But the things that they're saying about Kobe Bryant are the same things in pro the announcers were going to say time and time again. And they weren't all the positive ones. It's interesting. Those traits that he had as a high school player kind of also followed him to the NBA as well. Kobe Bryant, high school basketball.
Skip pass cross court, and they look to go to Kobe Bryant in the middle. He steps up. And this one is off the mark, and Terry Cringy will clear it. One thing that you'll probably notice quite early is that when Kobe Bryant takes the shot from outside, Kobe Bryant is not underneath to clear the boards.
And all the height is gone at that point.
Cotton battles and corrals it and kicks it back out.
This is high school, by the way, folks.
Then lost it. And the Cougars are up by 1 at 8-7. Kobe Bryant. Right now, Bryant can't buy a basket, but I guarantee he'll keep shooting.
See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. How many times you see Kobe as a pro, they go, well, he's 0 for 35 now. But Kobe would then, with 1 second left, hit the three that killed your team. That was Kobe Bryant. And you can even hear, look, honestly, you don't think that those guys who were adults calling the game, kind of not a fan of Kobe Bryant. Well, as you know, there's no flashing getting a rebound, so he won't be there. Right you are, Dave. That's the,
I think his name was Stan. His name was Stan.
I just find it unbelievable, but the things that were said about him were said back then. But that play-by-play with the camera, it's unbelievable. But that a little flashback, I love looking at those kinds of things. And there's a bunch on there. Kevin Durant is a kid, Russell Westbrook. And that's the thing about earlier, playing in this generation of electronic media and actually having the equipment at home. Do you have any stuff of you playing sports when you were young?
My grandfather would record me, so I do have tapes, but I don't have
the Super 8, the movie projectors. I've got one brief thing in playing hockey. So I've got literally maybe 160 seconds of me playing goal.
Yeah.
That's it.
I wish it was more. You know what I mean? Because it's funny. It just wasn't the thing back when we were kids.
We
right?
didn't, and most people didn't even have those movie projectors. Cameras.
Marissa just finished her first year of T-ball last summer, and what we shot of her through her 15 games is probably more of my entire life of.
Here's a 5-year-old girl warming up before she's going to play T-ball. You're like, oh, Dave, this has gone on for a half an hour. This is game number 1.
It's true.
Hey, actually, it's the preseason game, Mike.
It's true. It's so true. And it's like, okay, well, that's, you just look through my phone. I got 5,000 pics and, 4,900 of them are of her, right? So it's a different age, right? Different era, different age. Quality of video is just phenomenal, too. And it's just like, it's easy to do, so.
Russell, do you have any footage and video of?
He should. See, he's part of that generation where mom and dad probably could have taken a lot of stuff if he was any good at stuff.
Yeah. Do you have a?
So the question is
there a Russell Graham reel?
Yeah, the reel.
My dad shot a decent amount of my stuff.
There you
me
go.
And my brother's stuff, and as well as one of my years, our trainer got parents to film the games, and at the end of the year he made a whole highlight video for the team as well as individual for each player on the team. So I have that DVD, but other than that it's just video files that my dad would occasionally shoot at my games.
What a tremendous story.
Yes, almost wish I could hear that again.
Yeah. Said no one ever. Oh, this machine. Oh, tried to hit that. What? Tried to. By the way, the amazing can we get the amazing Govan on camera on the Russ cam? Is that possible? Ladies and gentlemen, all the way.
All the way, yeah.
From Calgary, Alberta.
There you go.
There
you go.
There it is time.
Our studio audience. I love
there
it. He's a season ticket holder of the Canadian Premiership League. I'm just telling you. It's happening.
I don't know if he's got time with all the trauma that goes with being a Riders fan. Although, Zach Collaros, I don't know. I think it could be a good one.
I think they finished top 5 this year in the West.
That's known as sarcasm. We talked Canadian Premier League soccer with Commissioner David Clanahan.
You got it.
Yeah.
That's it. Get him back here.
It should be Callahan. It should be someone from Ireland, not Scotland. That was great stuff. Thanks for coming in and join us tomorrow because Rochelle. Oh, yeah.